By most accounts, I had a pretty good childhood. Had a wonderful mother and grandparents. We spent best times together, birthdays, holidays. But there were secrets in my family that told a very different story. It started with Albert, the man who impregnated my mother when she was 19 years old, soon after she graduated high school. When she was pregnant with me, he became violent and would beat her repeatedly. In fact, the first memory I ever have in life is my mother comforting me by singing after one of those beatings. He took us to North Carolina, where he isolated us from my grandparents and the rest of our family, and it got worse there. Once when we were visiting here back in Atlanta, I was with my grandfather going to get a haircut, and I noticed some pine trees, and I said, "That looks like where Dad hits Mom." He slams on the brakes, almost wrecking the car. He said, "What did you say?" So I repeated myself. They intervened immediately, and we moved in with them, my mother and I. Albert would come periodically and try to take me on little trips. I would refuse to go, and it would enrage him. One day he chased me all the way into the basement, and he picked up this big glass ashtray, and he threw it right at my head. Luckily it missed, hit the wall. My mother sprang into action. She punched him right in the nose and pushed him out the door. And that was the last time I ever saw Albert. A few years later, my mother met a man named Steve. And Steve adopted me when I was 3 years old, and he and my mother got married. But he had secrets too. His severe alcoholism. It wasn't apparent at first. I was too young to really understand what that was. But what I did know is when I went to work with him, he would always pop a beer open when he was driving us home from the construction site. He looked like Harrison Ford. He was a construction worker. I felt safe with him. I thought this was where we were supposed to be. But I didn't like the deception. He would sometimes take me to a place pretty close to here, actually. It was called the Austin Avenue Buffet, right there on Austin Avenue. And he would sit me up on the counter and have Miss Sadie make me a hot dog while he went in the back and gambled and drank. Ironically, that place is now called the Albert. I remember one night, I was sitting in the kitchen. I hear his truck pull up. He comes in, stumbling, falls into the rocking chair, tries to untie his shoes, cussing and mumbling. He can't do it. Whips out a knife and just cuts the shoelaces right off. Rips his shoes off, throws them against the wall, stumbles down the hallway, hear the shower turn on, and then he goes to bed. I didn't know if my mom knew what was going on, but I guess she should have, because the shower curtains were always ripped down from him being unable to stand in the shower, and she was constantly having to replant the flowers in the driveway because his truck would always run over them. As his drinking got worse, he got more emotionally abusive towards me, and after my sister was born, it got worse. He would sort of use her as a weapon against me, be really nice to her, be really ugly to me. Eventually, my mother got fed up, had enough, and divorced him when I was a freshman in high school. He slinked away and we didn't really see him. He went into an alcoholic self-pity party, and I think that's lasted for the past 10 years. A few years later, she met her high school sweetheart. They both went to Paideia back in the 70s. She met him at his father's funeral. And things looked really good then. I was about to go to college. He was cool. He rode a motorcycle. He drank. He smoked. Of course, I'm all about those things. I'm headed to college. So I thought, this is somebody I can hang with. And we did hang. And I thought he was a great guy. But he had secrets too. He was horrible with money. My mother would lock his debit cards up in her desk at work to keep him from spending all of our money. But when my mother got sick with cancer, she was diagnosed in February and gone in October. And it was a very quick decline. And everything started to become apparent. He would leave her alone for hours on end with no help, just a cup of water by her bed. We all thought he was there for her, and he wasn't. The worst secret, however, was that since my sister was 11 years old, in 3 years that he was together with my mom, he was sexually and physically abusing her. And none of us knew. My mother didn't even know, and she never knew. She passed away before that really came out. And we had to get my sister somewhere safe. And unfortunately, he took everything we had and wouldn't let us have our mother's clothing, even, family heirlooms. He pawned them, took all of our family inheritance and ran, basically. And I haven't seen him since. I guess the moral of the story here is that, or really what I want you to know about this story, is that my mother was a fierce, fierce advocate against domestic violence. She worked in the solicitor's office here in DeKalb County, and she was keeping all this a secret. I don't know how many of her colleagues or friends or even our family members knew what was going on in our home. But it wasn't all bad. Because of that work she was doing, I had many men in my life that really showed me a different way of walking in the world. People like Dick Bathrick, the co-founder of Men Stopping Violence. People like Jay Eisner with the DeKalb Police Department. People like Derwin Brown, our former sheriff here in DeKalb County. And I wouldn't be the person I am today or standing here right now if it weren't for those experiences. Thank you.